Hey guys, what is happening? Nihat here with Film Comics Explained, and today we'll be looking at the Trixie virus. Trixie is a fictitious virus that was featured in both the 1973 film The Crazies, directed by George A. Romero, the godfather of horror, and the 2010 remake starring Timothy Olyphant. I love both versions of the film in equal measure, as their execution of the same premise varies significantly. The original plays out like a political drama, with a virus outbreak as its backdrop, dealing with the outbreak on multiple fronts as we see the townspeople, military, and political leaders wrestling with the problems faced with the Trixie virus. The remake goes in a completely different direction, revealing less about the virus, and instead allowing us to see the effect of the Trixie outbreak from the point of view of the protagonists, David and Judy. In essence, it's more of a horror film. Once Trixie enters the bloodstream, it travels to the brain where it causes severe swelling and inflammation. It is revealed to us by one of the scientists responsible for its creation that once contracted, the virus turns the host into a carrier that is capable of spreading it. He also mentions that there were two different side effects to the exposure of Trixie, as he'd witnessed two of his technicians succumbing to infection during its development stage. An infected person will either suffer from a reduction of mental functions caused by the onset of delirium before dying after the second day, or they go completely mad. The original story involves many characters, and we see the focus switch between the military attempting to contain the Trixie outbreak to the people trying to overcome not only the virus, but the military presence as well. We follow the efforts of David, a local firefighter, his fiancée Judy, a nurse, and his colleague Clank in their attempts to make it to safety. What makes this film exceptional for me is how great the ensemble cast are at setting the mood and tone of the film. Every single character, from the children at the start and their crazed father, to the soldiers and each of the townsfolk, all feel grounded and fleshed out. Romero utilizes the enormous cast effectively to trickle information down to the audience. One of my favorite scenes in this film is a woman playing piano while her husband is shot dead by the military in the other room. The look on her face is just so unsettling. The scene that follows with her mother is just as incredible. We see an old lady knitting who is interrupted by a soldier who calmly asks her to exit, only to get repeatedly pierced by her knitting needles. It's a juxtapositioning of the horrific acts of violence to the people committing them, who appear to be calm and happy, that makes this film so memorable and groundbreaking for its time. While the townsfolk respond to the madness, we can see the military severing communications. We then see the soldiers rounding up all the civilians without an explanation. What's interesting to note is that most of the soldiers don't really know what is happening until the arrival of a colonel who informs his second in command of the true horrors surrounding Trixie. The colonel explains that Trixie was not an experimental vaccine like most of the soldiers had believed, but was instead developed as a biological weapon. A plane that was carrying it crashed on the northern outskirts of the town. The virus then seeped into the soil and reservoirs containing the town's water supply. With all the soldiers wearing white biosuits and gas masks, preventing us from clearly hearing or seeing them, they all sort of blend as one character, the oppressor. The acting is for the most part naturalistic, although admittedly hammy at times. One of my favourite things about this film is this ominous military drumming that fades in and out from the start of the film, which allows you to feel the intrusive presence of the military before any of the soldiers are even seen. Concerned with issues of containment, we see the political leaders discuss their course of action. They bring up some valuable points about the logistics and repercussions of a military presence in a small town, like potential civil unrest. Concerned about the spread of Trixie nationwide, they set in motion a contingency plan to wipe the entire town off the map with a nuclear warhead, should the virus prove to be beyond containment. Things get heated quickly as the people resist the unexpected and unexplained trampling of their civil liberties. It doesn't help that some of the soldiers are being absolute dicks, as we see some of them stealing from the homes of the people they have just rounded up. We see casualties on both sides because of this. Using their previous experience as soldiers, David and Clank lead a small group to what they hope will be safety. Unfortunately, we see some of the group members slowly succumbing to the virus. What's also interesting to note is that the scientist involved in the engineering of Trixie discovers a cure while working in a makeshift military lab, but is unable to share his news or deliver the cure to the right people. In what has to be one of the most depressing moments after the full containment of the entire town, the colonel in charge of the whole operation is informed by his superiors that he'll be heading to the next town where symptoms resembling Trixie have popped up, suggesting an infected person had left Evans City prior to the arrival of the soldiers. While the original film is set in Evans City, the remake is set in the nearby town of Ogden Marsh. We follow the efforts of David from the original story, Judy, and Clank. David's character is changed into the town's sheriff, along with Clank, who is called by his first name Russell in the film, with David's wife Judy as the town's doctor. I'm a huge Deadwood and Justified fan, so it was great to see Timothy Olyphant playing sheriff again. Olyphant and Radha Mitchell give the film so much needed heart. A couple getting ready for the arrival of their newborn baby, who are thrown into the horrific ordeal. The film begins with a quick look at the peaceful town and its inhabitants going about their day. There's a few hilarious interactions between some of the principal characters, which helps to create an atmosphere of lightness, peace, and tranquility, which is essential when you're about to have the town tear itself apart.
Well, I don't care what the calendar says. Opening day, that's the first day of spring.
No. Sheriff never pays for coffee.
Well, that's kind of you, Ben. But the principal still has to pay his parking tickets.
Start him a tab. Yes, sir.
We then see a local baseball game being interrupted by Rory, a man considered to be the town drunk, who has stumbled onto a field with a shotgun. Concerned for the safety of the students, family, and many onlookers, David approaches him and is forced to shoot him down after he raises the gun at him. What we also notice is that the town is already under surveillance, although it's not revealed who is watching them at this stage. The following day is chaotic for David, swarmed by phone calls of many concerned people, followed by the revelation from the chief examiner that the man he had shot dead was not actually drunk like he had thought. David and his wife Judy begin to see that all is not right with many of the people. David encounters the principal from before and sees that he's in an almost catatonic state, which he attributes to the shock of recent events.
Ben! Ben! Hey, you all right?
Don't worry, the kids are resilient. They're gonna be all right.
Judy also examines the father, who was brought in by his concerned children. What we notice is that both he and the principal show a lack of responsiveness, followed by mindless repetition, which is one of the first symptoms of Trixie. Setting the pace for things to come, we see the father terrorize his children before locking them inside the house and torching the whole building to the ground. Both David and Judy arrive at the property and are informed by the firefighters that while they were trying to put the fire out, William was just mowing his lawn. David and his deputy are then alerted to the body of a pilot that was found in the swamp, which then leads them onto the discovery of a plane that was carrying the Trixie virus. Confused as to how a plane of that size could have crashed without there being a report of it on the news, David soon begins to piece the clues together. He notices a pattern connecting the people who've gone crazy to the order in which the town's water supply reaches the residents. He attempts to convince the mayor to shut down the water, but is ignored, as the economic consequences of cutting the water off on a farming community are said to be too high. Compelled to help his people, regardless of the ramifications on himself, he disobeys a direct order and we see him shutting the water down. As some of the infected begin to enter the later stages of Trixie, David discovers that the communications in the town have been severed, with both the internet and phones not working. He then exits his office to find the town deserted, except for a mysterious car that is taking photos of the town, and a lady singing while riding a bicycle. An awesome cameo by Lynn Lowry, who was in the original film. The film then shifts gears and turns into a horror show as the infected townsfolk begin to enlighten us to the true meaning of crazy. What's most horrifying is that, unlike the original, where they simply become mad or begin losing their cognitive functioning, this film shows that some of the infected people maintain a measure of intelligence. And this is witnessed when David enters the morgue to find that the medical examiner has been sewing the mouths and eyes of people who are still alive. Also, the three hillbillies who were seen hunting early in the film go on a murderous rampage using their skills to kill and round up many innocent people. Just like the original film, we eventually see a heavy military presence rounding up the people of Ogden Marsh into a quarantine zone. David and Judy note that the soldiers are checking people for elevated temperatures, and Judy surmises, based on what they've seen, they must be dealing with a virus that causes cerebral hemorrhaging. While the 73 version does blame the military for the whole blunder, it wasn't as black and white as it is in this film, which portrays them in an almost completely negative light. Most of the soldiers in the original film were merely trying to help, and were not prepared for dealing with both Trixie and the containment of their own civilians. After many traumatic experiences, like seeing their friends either succumbing to the virus or being exterminated by the military, Judy and David eventually make it out of Ogden, just as a nuclear warhead is dropped on the town. Unfortunately for them, their escape is being watched from above, kickstarting yet another containment operation in the town they're about to head to, which is 100 times larger than Ogden Marsh. This film is fantastic and works because it stands on its own 2 feet. Having more centralized characters that we can follow and experience the events with was a major strength of this film, allowing for more clarity in the storytelling. This also allowed us to sympathize with the protagonists and develop an attachment to their situation, and by default, engage in the film further. Just as depressing and bleak as its predecessor, the remake injects some much needed action and anxiety-inducing horror. Well, that's all that we have time for. I hope you guys have enjoyed this video on the Trixie virus. As always, it's been a pleasure. Nihat here with Film Comics Explained. Thanks for stopping by.